Welcome to today's lesson on subprograms. We're going to be exploring the difference between functions and procedures and how they work. So we're going to try to get an idea of what a subprogram is. A subprogram is a smaller program that we write away from our main program. And this smaller program will be given a specific task. This specific task will be called upon at different points throughout the program. Kind of similar like a friend. You call your friend when you need something. If that's the only time you call your friend, then maybe you're not a good friend, but that's a conversation for another day. But again, going back to the subprograms, the subprograms hold a particular set of code which runs a specific task. And throughout the program, we'll call the subprogram to perform this task. Now, the two main types of subprograms are functions and procedures. And let's look at, so why use subprograms? So part of the reason, obviously, we've mentioned is the, subprograms perform us, a specific task, but they also allow our program to be smaller in size. We don't need to repeatedly write out code that allows us to do that particular task whenever we need to. When working in teams, it also is easier for someone else to interpret a subprogram because it's quite condensed and it's there. And also with the testing element of it, once you start programming, you'd realize that when you are needing to test your program, it's a lot easier when you have subprograms because your program, again, is smaller in size. So there's less to test, less lines of code to go through. And also subprograms can be constantly reused in your own program, but also other programs. When you save it as a module or save it to a library, this allows the programmer to save time because they can use code that's already been written and tested. So you know that it's perfectly fine. There's no potential bugs or errors. And finally, given a subprogram is written once, it results in a much shorter program. Okay, we don't need to repeatedly write out the program like mentioned earlier on. This is because the program can be accessed throughout the whole program. So let's look at procedures. So a procedure is a subprogram, and again, it performs a specific task. The task is executed. When the subprogram ends, the main program continues from the line it was last on. Now, for example, a procedure, it may be written to reset all the values of an array to 0 or to clear screens. Now, here is an example of a pseudocode for a procedure. It's got general syntax, and we're just going to uncover what it looks like. So as you can see, we've circled the procedure name. So you need to give your procedure a name so that we know when to call it. It may also have parameters. Now, parameters are pieces of data that need to be passed in order for this subprogram to work, or in this case, procedure rather. Now, as you can see, we have the parameters num1 and num2. When this procedure is called, a variable called answer is holding the value of num1 plus num2, kind of living to its name because the procedure's name is what? It's called addition. Finally, we print answer, and that's the end of the procedure, and we go back to the main program. Now we're going to take a look at an example of some procedures. So to start off with, we need to use the keyword def. This is telling the computer that we are defining either a function or procedure. Now I'm going to call this addition. So this is the key name. And then I'm going to have two parameters. I'm going to call it num1, comma, num2. You need your colon, then indent. And I need to create a variable called answer. This is going to hold the workings out of adding the two numbers together. And then we will print answer to the main program. And that's done. Now I want to call this function. So I'm going to, call this procedure using the name addition, and I'm going to pass in the arguments 5, 5. So if we run this now, we should get 10. There we go. Now, if I was to remove print and run this, nothing appears. Why? Because a procedure does not send any data or value back to the main program. And if I try to print answer over here, okay, let's see what happens. We get an error. Why? Because answer is a local variable which only exists in this part of the program. And the main program is looking for the variable answer as a global variable, which does not exist. So to summarize with the procedure, you always kind of need to, if you want to output the information, you need to kind of always output it in the procedure itself, okay? And it doesn't send any data back to the main program. So if you wish to do anything with the data itself, you need to ideally return it. The next thing we need to be aware of are functions. Now, functions work pretty much the same way as procedures. There's only one key difference you need to be aware of, and it is a common exam question from time to time, is the difference. And the difference is that once the functions manipulate the data, they then return it back to the main program. So we've got an example here of a function that's written to turn Fahrenheit into Celsius. So we've got the name f_2_c, okay, and then the parameter is temperature_in_f. We've got a line of code that does the calculation, and then this line of code, the answer is stored in the variable temperature_in_c. And we then return this temperature_in_c to the main program. Okay, the variable and this data is returned to the main program wherever it was. So if it was called using a print statement, then it's called using a print statement. If it's called using a variable, then it's going to return there. So here's an example of parameters and values, okay, and us actually calling and returning the value back to the main program. So again, a parameter, just to touch on it again, is a special name given to a variable that's passed into a function. It's worth noting that both procedures and functions can take in parameters. An argument is a name that is given to the actual values when the subprogram is called. So when we're calling the subprogram, so if you see here, I have name is equal to hello, Jonathan, wire. Now, the arguments are what we're passing into the function. So Jonathan will go into first name and wire will go into second name. If we swap the names around, then Jonathan will be going into the second name because Jonathan will be the second argument and wire will be the first argument. So that's an example of arguments and functions. Now we're going to take a look at some practical examples of functions being used. See you there. We're going to now convert this into a function. So we're going to get rid of print answer. Now I'm going to write return answer. Now, if I run this program, let's see what happens. Now, when we're running this program, nothing is occurring. Well, in terms of output anyway. What we now need to do is we need to either store this in a variable and we can print this on the next line and it should give us the answer. There we go. Or alternatively, we could just put this in the print statement. So if we run this now, it should give us the same answer. So 10. We're now going to start looking at maybe a more technical or more detailed example. So if I wanted to create a multiple functions, let's say we're going to make a simple calculator, which is going to do some addition, multiplication, and division and subtraction. So we are going to have num1, num2. And here we're going to have answer is equal to num1 plus num2. And we're going to return, we're going to return answer. So that's our addition, just to save time. I'm going to copy and paste this, change it to subtraction. And we're going to use the mathematical operator for subtraction. I'm going to copy and paste this again. And we're going to have one for multiplication, but I'll just call it MULT, just to save us a bit of time. Got the operator for multiplication. And we're going to do div for division. And do our slash for division also. So we've created a set of functions now. if I wanted to now start using these functions and start to put this into use, I will show you how we do that. So again, we can have multiple variables. So I can do, just click on the screen again, click on, so we're going to make a variable called A, and we're going to call subtraction, and we're going to put in 10, 5. And now we're going to have B is equal to mode. We're going to do 10, 71, just some random numbers. And now I'm going to do multiple print statements for addition, just to show you different ways we can do it. 1, 2. Now to save time, I'm going to copy and paste this a few times. We're going to change it to 3 and 2, sorry, 4, oh, sorry, 5 and 109, 1 and 7, 5 and 2. Okay, so now if we run this program, let's see what happens. So we've got the additions being displayed, but we don't have the A and the B. Remember, we need to print the variables. Otherwise, the data is just sitting there in the variable. So we print A and B. And now if we run it, we should get those values as well. There we go. So now you can see, instead of me having to write out multiple variables, I have to then have the, the multiplication or any sort of calculations done. We can literally just call it. It's done locally and it returns it to the answer. Otherwise, in theory, we would have a variable for each value and a variable for each answer. So let's just say 3 for each. So that would be 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. 18 variables. That's quite a lot of us writing it out repeatedly. So this is just a short example of the benefits of using functions or procedures, but I just chose to use functions in this instance. I hope this helps, and I hope today's lessons helped you uncover subprograms, what they're used for, their benefits. I hope you've got an idea of parameters and arguments also. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you at the next lesson. Thank you very much.